Hello everybody, Kevin here. Thank you for joining me on Kevin's Way Works. So what you're looking at here is a 2012 Husqvarna YTH 24K48 riding mower with an SV725 Kohler engine. While troubleshooting an engine issue, I discovered that the starter wasn't properly engaging. In this video, we'll remove, diagnose, and repair the issue identified with the starter. So stay tuned and I'll show you how to do this Kevin's way. Okay, I have you positioned where you can hear the issue that we're having. So listen carefully and we'll see if we can hear it. That's not it. Come on, are you serious? Well, it looks like we're going to have another type of video first. So what's going on right now is the starter is not engaging, and the starter is right down here. I've had this mower since 2012, as I stated earlier in the video, and I have never had it do this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the lid off here and we're going to take a look at it and see if we can figure out why the starter is not engaging. So the first step is going to be to take this cover off. Pretty easy to do. This one has lights. You just disconnect the two cables. You tilt it forward just a hair and it comes right off. And as you can see, that gives us good access to the engine. So let me get you positioned and we'll start taking some bolts out. Alright, first step. Remove the front two bolts. These are 10mm. I'm using my impact driver just because it's quicker. This is our fuel pump, also 10mm, and there's two of those. On the left side, down at the bottom, there is this little push-in grommet here. On mine, I've taken it off so many times that I can just pop it off, but yours may be a little harder to remove. So you can use one of these plastic tools. If you have one that fits, push it in here, pull out. Mine doesn't work, it's too small, but I do have a metal one here. And so the same thing, push it in here, gently pry back, and it comes off. And then these panels slide down on a couple of little plastic pieces. Actually, there's two, so you can see there's one right there, and then there's one right there, and those just slide right down into there and there, and that's it. And there's your little hole right here where the plastic retainer was slid into. Alright, we are on the right side, and this is basically just a mirror image of the other side. So take your tool, slide it on up under there, and just, my tire is in the way here, and just gently pry until it pops out, and there's what it looks like. And so now that one's removed. Just grab, pull up, and pull out. Same exact concept. And look at all that junk down there. So it looks like we have, I don't know if that's oil leaking by or if that's just dust that's accumulated. So anyway, we'll get that cleaned up later. Let's focus on the starter for now. So next we have to undo this little bolt on the side, and then there's two on the back that need to come out next as well, and then there's one more on the other side. So let me get you positioned. We'll take care of those. Alright, I have you on the left side now. This is an 8mm. We're going to use the impact driver just to make it quick, and I'm just going to gently unscrew that, pull it out. And you have to undo these even if you unhook the hoses. This clip screws through the plastic into the metal underneath, so you have to remove them. Okay, we're on the right side. Same thing, has to be removed. And just unhook it just like that. And we'll get the two on the back next. And it started to rain, so I'm gonna have to pack this up for now, and we'll come back to it in a few minutes. All right, back inside out of the rain. Let's see if we can get these. Hopefully you can see I have a flashlight shining on this. So these are 8mm, and because of the position, I can't get the impact in there. There's a battery in the way, and we're just gonna have to hand loosen these. These ones are awkward to get to, but if you loosen them up, you should be able to remove them by hand pretty easily. So there's one. And then this other one, you can either reach up and under like this, which is how I usually do it, break it free, and then you can get your fingers in there usually and turn it. This one has too much tension on it still. Now if you have like a ratcheting wrench, sometimes that makes it easier. Alrighty, there that is. Let's see how it looks underneath there. Now that should be good and out of the way. Let's pull this off. Set it aside. And let me get you on the other side so you can see the starter. There's our starter. Let's see if we can reproduce the problem. Well, that's kind of interesting because that should actually be down right now, so it's actually up and it's engaged, but it should be down, and then when you go to start it, it should shoot up, and then the teeth should mesh with the teeth here. Ours is not doing that, so I'm gonna have to dig further into it. We'll take it off and see if we can find what the problem is. Just another angle, you can see the gear. And when you turn the starter on, this is supposed to shoot up. It'll turn, shoot up, and it'll grip. And we have something not working right. So what I'm going to do is set you up, and we're going to do it. We're going to start it and see if this gear under here is even turning. All right, I've got you positioned pretty good. I'm going to give it a turn. You guys tell me what you see. So what do you guys see? All right, first things first, we disconnect the battery. Not a 10mm. And this is 11mm bolt and nut. Let's start with the negative. Get that out of the way. I'm going to put the nut and bolt back on so we don't lose it. And then we're going to go over to the positive, and we're going to do the same thing. Come on, get in there. Alright, that's broken free. Let's undo the screw and nut. Trying not to drop anything. Move your positive cable out of the way, and so we don't lose the nut and bolt. Tighten it back on a little bit. So I'm going to put the negative cable down out of the way. I don't know if you can see over here, there's a hole. I'm just going to drop it in that hole. Positive, you can bend up out of the way. Just try not to damage anything. And the only reason we're just getting out of the way so we don't accidentally touch our studs, our battery posts, and energize things. All right, let me get you positioned and we will take the starter off. Okay, first thing we have to do is remove the cable attached to the starter. And so we're going to use an 11mm wrench that fits through back on this stud. This is actually 7/16 because I could not find an 11mm that fit. And the reason you're doing this is because if you're just going to remove and use the same starter for whatever reason, you don't want to try to remove this nut without holding this, because you can break the internals of the starter. So you'll want to hold that, and even if you're not going to save it, you want to hold it, because if you break it off inside, then you're still not going to be able to get the nut off. So make sure you use that wrench and then get yourself positioned to where you can get a good grip on the wrench and whatever you're using to remove the nut. And I just like to squeeze them like that, and it just unscrews super easily. And we did not damage anything. So keep your nut if you're replacing the starter, because you don't know if the new one's going to have one or not. I am going to put it back on it though, so I don't lose it. And then the next thing we have to do is take this bolt and this bolt out. These are 10mm. I don't know how much torque they have. I've never taken this apart, but just in case, I got my long ratchet. So let's get this guy on here and let's give it a little pressure, and that came off easily, no issues. So I'm going to start it with this, break it free, and then I'm going to use my impact gun to help speed up the process. So I've got my impact gun with a 10mm socket, and let's just zip that thing off. There's the first one. Now be careful, this thing is heavy, so if you're not holding it, or if you just have your fingers below it and you're not paying attention, it's pretty heavy. So right now this is being held by the dipstick tube. So I'm just going to gently hold it, remove the 2 bolts, and there it is. So there is our bad starter. Most likely something is stripped up inside of it up here. I mean, we'll see if we can take it apart and look at the insides, but most likely we're just going to have to replace it. So give me a second, we'll get this thing disassembled. Alright guys, I have you set up down here in my shop, and I was looking at this and I think I know how it works. So if you look down in here, you'll see this piece right here. Let's see if we can get it to come out. Alright, so see this little piece right here? What this is, it rides on the worm drive and it gets pushed out, and there's rubber inside of this gear, so it rides up in that rubber and it grips good and tight, and that also gives it the ability to slip. If something happens and the starter jams or the engine jams, it can still spin without damaging anything else. And so that's what that is. It's supposed to be like that. I think the problem we were having is this was not going back down. So once it starts, it's supposed to go back down. You see how it's kind of lazy about doing it? Well, it was stuck up. But the problem is this was falling down by itself, and when it was coming back up, it wasn't making good contact, and it was just not spinning like it was supposed to. So let's go ahead and get this nut off, and we'll get this cleaned and put back together, and I think we'll be good to go. So I'm just going to clean this with brake parts cleaner, and we should be good to go. You don't want to put any of the lube in here because you have to rely on the the metal to rubber contact to spin the gear. So no lube, just clean it. So let's see if we can. We're not going to get that off with our hands, guys. We're going to end up tearing our fingers up. So let's put our vice grips just gently on here. And that came off, no problem. Vice grips out of the way. So let's look at what we have. So we have a lock nut, and see how the metal is depressed in there, and that basically forms a locking mechanism on the end. So that's our lock nut. We just have a simple washer. We have our spring. We have our gear with the rubber interface on the inside. And it probably also meshes with this steel. So you have the steel and the rubber that it will mesh with to help create the grip that it needs to spin. But it also has a decoupling mechanism in case something locks up. So gear, little spacer, and then we have the other part of the worm drive system. And so you can see the worm. Hopefully I'm using the right terminology, but that looks like a worm drive to me. It may have a different name for in this kind of situation, but I'm going to call it a worm drive. So it's got a lot of dust and rubber in there, so let's get that cleaned up. Just happen to have some paper towels nearby. We'll just use a white plain paper towel. We only need one of the little halves. So we'll get that folded up nice and neat. Somewhat nice and neat, not a big deal. This is just your Walmart brand brake parts cleaner. Put a little squirt on there. Get this shaft cleaned up. Get our little spacer cleaned up. Get this guy cleaned up. It's hard to hold on to clean. That only has teeth on the bottom. They don't go all the way up into it. If you were to do some type of lubricant on this, I would say probably a graphite. Because if you get grease up in here, it's not going to work. And I bet you a lot of people do use grease. And that basically just makes it inoperable after that. You can probably rough this surface up a little bit, but I don't think that's necessary. This one's really not that bad. Lots of black dust up in there. Let's find a clean area on our paper towel. I'm just going to run it around the rubber here. Hopefully this doesn't damage the rubber. So that's that. Not much you can do about the spring. There's probably not much on it. I mean, you can try to get your paper towel up in there. Try not to stretch it any more than it already is. Probably wouldn't hurt any if it stretched a little bit. But I'm just going to keep it like it is. So that floats on there pretty good. A new starter's not too expensive. I went and looked it up. I mean, some of the no-name brands are 50, 60 bucks. I could not actually find a brand new Kohler or Bendix. I think Bendix makes these. I couldn't find any for sale that were sold by the manufacturer. So it looks like aftermarket's probably what you would have to do. So anyway, let's get this thing back together. This guy goes on first. This little spacer here, I don't think it has a special way to go. So we'll stick that guy on right there. And goes the gear. And then goes your spring. And then you have your washer. And then you have your nut. And so this nut, you don't want to go on this way with it, because then you have the crimped part, or the compressed part, going all the way up the threads, and it will end up damaging the threads. So we're just going to go yay much on there. I'm going to see if we can get this tightened up. There is torque spec on this, and I don't think it was that much. I think it was only like 55 inch-pounds, something like that. I don't have my torque wrench, and I don't know if we're going to be able to torque it really well. So we're just going to hit it with, give it a couple little clicks of the impact, and we should be good to go. So I'm just going to keep an eye on this to see how it spins when I do this. So I'm sure that's good. You don't want to do too much. You could end up damaging the end. So that's that. So it's still a little lazy, but before it was just staying at the top. But as you can see now, it's going back down. So I think that'll be good. Yeah, this did not operate like that before. So I'm going to call that good. Let's go get this reinstalled. And I forgot one thing. Do not forget to put this cap back on the end here. Now, it's a little difficult to get installed, but just give it a little press, a little twist and a press, and there it goes. Okay, guys, that's all for cleaning and reassembling the starter. So let's go ahead and get this reinstalled on the mower. Before we reinstall this, let's get all this junk out of here. So I'm just going to take this container and kind of prop it right there. Let's get all this dust and probably some grease build up in there too. Let's try to get as much of it in the bucket as we can. And this may have been when I had a leak in the valve cover, and it was blowing all the little bit of oil infused air. It was blowing that all out. And it's either that or we're leaking here, but I don't think we're leaking at the drain. I think it was the other issue. So let's get all this junk out of here. A bunch of it up here too. All right, that's good. Most of it went in the bucket. Got to remember to clean that tool. All right, I'll call that good. So now to get this back in, pretty simple, opposite of the way we removed it. You get your bolts ready. Make sure it's facing the right way, so this stud is facing out, not in. hold it up in place, drop your bolts on the ground. Now always hand start the bolts, because if you don't, you risk stripping things. You risk damaging threads and stripping stuff, so I always hand tighten. Get several threads in there to begin with, and so that feels like we're pretty good. Make sure that your dipstick tube is in, because that one was actually a little out of the hole. And then I am going to use the impact, but I'm only going to gently get it started. Once we bottom out, we're going to stop and we're going to get the torque spec and we're going to torque it. All right, so let me get the torque spec for you guys. We'll get that torqued and ready to go. All right, guys. Hard to really find information on this. I found a couple things. One said 120 inch-pounds and the other said 135. So I've got mine set to 11 foot-pounds, which should get us in the range we need to be in. So let's go ahead and give this a torque. And there's that one. 11 foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and get this one done. This was 11 millimeters. So we have our 11 millimeter socket. And get our cable attached. Make sure we hold this so we don't damage it. And again, I have no idea what the spec was on this, so I'm just gonna give it a good little bit of a twist, kind of try to tighten it up where I think is good enough, but not too tight. So I think right about there is good. So let's go ahead and get our battery hooked back up. Let's start with the positive cable here. And if you remember, these were 11 millimeters. Hopefully my hand's not too much in the way here. Not much to do here, just tighten the nut up. You don't have to go super crazy. Just get that tight enough to where it's good and snug. And now let's do the same with the negative. And the negative, I push down this hole, so let's pull it back out. And this I believe, make sure your power's off. Mine was on. I'm going to go through this way because I want the teeth to catch on this side, because if they're on this side, they're just going to, I guess it really doesn't matter. But we're going to do teeth on this side because that's the way I want to do it. All right, good and tight, good and tight. All right, guys, let's see if this thing works. So I'm going to do this two different ways. Currently, I have the valve cover off, so I can't really start it without oil getting everywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over without the spark plugs in, and that'll show us if it rises, turns, and then drops back down like it's supposed to or not. And then the second thing we're going to do is install the spark plugs, but leave them unplugged. And then we're going to turn it over just to make sure it has enough power to actually grip and spin the motor while it's compressing the gases. So let's go ahead and do that. So right now there are no spark plugs in it. So as you guys could see, everything turned like it was supposed to, and it retracted back down like it was supposed to. So now let me go ahead and install the spark plugs, and we'll give it another try. Alright, as you can see right down here, I have one of the spark plugs installed on this side and also on the other side. So let me go ahead and crank that over, and it should come up and spin the motor. It may not go down because there's going to be some tension on the gears because the spark plugs are in, but that's not an issue. When it starts running, it'll go down properly. So let me go ahead and bump that a couple times and we'll see what happens. So as you can see, it actually did spin the motor. The problem is the battery's low. I left it turned on, I forgot to turn it off. But that's still a successful test because it was able to spin the motor up until it tried to compress the gases, and then it just didn't have enough juice to get through it. Alright guys, another successful repair. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you got something out of it. And it'd be awesome if you could give it a like and subscribe. And thank you guys for watching Kevin's Way Works.